you ever wondered what a professional Logic Pro production might look like? Well, seeing one I think is dramatically going to improve how you approach writing and producing in Logic. So in this video, I'm going to take you directly inside my Logic Pro session here, and I'm going to show you exactly how I produced a song that eventually got signed to Universal Music. I'm going to walk you through literally every step of the process from the very first song idea to the final mix and master, so you can just see firsthand what goes into creating a professional sounding track right here from my home studio. And the best part, you can actually take these exact techniques and start using them in your own music today, even if you're just starting out too. All right, let's rewind to where this track actually started. So last year, I made a trip to Berlin to write some songs. I met up with a really dear friend of mine, an incredibly talented songwriter. His name is Charlie Grant, and we set out to write a pop rock track that we could pitch to Universal Production Music. Now, starting from nothing is always tricky, so we wanted to set a vibe right away. So I thought, why don't we start with the drums? Like, funny enough, the drums here, this whole entire track, is a splice loop. And sometimes it's that easy where you just have a loop that works for the entirety of the song. I didn't have to record drums. I didn't even have to program anything in. You can see it's the entire one loop for the entire song. Now, where I kind of find that dynamic in this loop is within automation. And I'll touch on automation later in the video to help you bring your tracks to life. So you're not going to want to miss that part because it's a really important part to the production. But let's just focus on the guitar here, these guitar parts, the drums, and then the structure of the song, because I think that's really important that the first thing is really the foundation of the song that you get right, because then, just like a house, anything you build on top of it needs to be solid underneath so it doesn't fall apart. So let's hide all the other tracks right now just so we can focus in on those. Okay, so the main drum loop sounds like this. I'm going to play it from verse 1. So I thought that the purpose of this song was to be kind of pop rock, right? And so I thought that was definitely a pop rock feel. Now, I just quickly found that on Splice. Splice, if you don't know of Splice, it is a free, not free. It's a paid sound library. It costs anywhere between $7 and $15 a month. I use it a lot to find samples. Now, as I was finding this drum loop, which didn't take long, Charlie was playing this guitar progression here. So he was playing that on the guitar and he was running it through his pedal board, and I was going directly into the interface from his pedal board. So those effects there, most of what's happening here is from the pedals. A bit of chorus, a bit of reverb, a bit of compression. I won't get too deep into effects right now, but I'll touch on that later, just so we can have a bit of distinction between each sections in this video. So the foundation of the song is already set with these parts, right? Now that we have those parts, we need to decide the structure of the song and think, okay, well, that's a great sounding drum loop. That's a great sounding progression. Okay, now how do we use these pieces to build out the structure of our song? Should the progression go the entire way? Should the drum loop go the entire way? What is the song? So at this moment, when you're producing and songwriting in the same session, you don't know the structure of the song yet because you haven't written the song yet. So you're kind of producing and songwriting at the same time. So with that, you'll notice here I've muted these guitars, and I'll tell you why I did that after in the video. But to start, I just duplicated these guitars. So when we actually wrote the song, these were all here, unmuted. And this guitar progression here went for the entirety of the song. And so did the drum loop. I didn't add any automation or dynamic changes, just so we could write the song. And I like to use markers at the top here so I can have a structure of what's the visual representation of the song. We have an introduction. Okay, verse, 8 bars. Pre, about 8 bars. into a chorus, into verse 2, pre-chorus, bridge, and chorus 3. I can actually set that out in markers, set the foundational elements, drums or guitar, throughout the whole song. You can always mute things later on. This is more about like getting a visual representation of the structure if you're songwriting the song in the production session, right? The alternative here is if you're actually writing the song. If you are, you've already written the song, then you already know the song structure, right? So you can go ahead about it that way. But we don't necessarily know what the structure is yet because we haven't written the song. So we kind of just have to paste it out here to get a visual representation of the song so we can start filling in the melody and also the other production elements. So now that we have this representation, I can also see like we had this part here, this little chorus progression in the chorus, but it just felt like it needed to go somewhere with the guitar in that chorus as we were writing the song. So we have this guitar part here with the drums. Back into the chord progression. Same thing for this chorus and same thing for these choruses. Those are just pasted. I pasted those elements over to the other choruses. This guitar here is just a build up to the chorus. You can see, I'll just play it from bar 27. And to develop the drums a little bit in the chorus, because it's just one loop going throughout, there's not a lot of there could be a bit more hi-hat energy, at least I thought, in the chorus. So I brought this hat loop. And a crash right on the one of the chorus. These are all samples that I got from Splice as well. So with all three of those elements in here, and I'll get into more effects later on in the video here, talking a little bit more about the reverbs and the distortions, the automation, just how we bring this loop, even though it is a loop, how do we bring it to life a bit more? And to develop a little bit more, it's not super sophisticated, right? But to develop a little bit more in the second and third chorus, adding this tambourine here. So you're kind of getting an idea. Now it's not over complicated, right? This is very simple in a way. We have these elements, we're pairing them with our main guitar parts here, and we have the entire foundation of the song. I forgot to mention these little tom rolls that come in second and third chorus here. So to recap, get the foundation elements to your song, whether that be the drums or whether that be a main instrument part, maybe it's a guitar, maybe it's a piano, maybe it's a string element, and build out the structure using markers in Logic. Get that from start to finish. It doesn't need to be 100% confirmed, but at least get a visual representation so you know what to lay on top of your foundation, right? And at this point, again, you can always go back on, nothing has to be 100% confirmed, but you should, the foundational elements or the recordings, the loops, the recordings that you've put in should be good. They, maybe you want to put something in there so you can decide on it later on. But if you are taking the time to do these proper recordings, then it's going to save you a lot of time in the future, because then you won't have to go back and re-record anything. We took time and got the right tone of this guitar. I took the time, although it was quick, to find the drum loop that fit with this guitar. So we didn't have to go back later on, and I didn't have to go find any more drums. We didn't have to re-record any of these guitars because we took the time up front to get those elements right. With a song idea like this and the song near kind of the idea near completion, it gives us a lot of foundation, right? But at this step, it was like time to bring the track more to life. And I think the core to any song and I hope you would agree with me, is the groove, right? Specifically like the bass and the drums and how they work together. And like if the drums, the bass, and the rhythm instruments aren't locked in, then the entire song just kind of falls flat. So in this next section, I'm going to break down the guitar layers, how the drums and bass like interact with each other. And also something important is just like what plugins I used and what processing I used here to shape the sound. Okay, so this is an important section of the song. It's really where the production comes to life because we're going to be talking about groove here. So let's bring in some elements here. We're going to bring in the bass. I'm going to unhide the chorus bass, the bridge bass, and the kind of verse bass. And I'm also going to bring in these other guitar elements. We have a guitar at the end, these electric picks. I'll go through all of these elements here, electrics. I'm going to leave out the pianos for now. I want to touch on those in just a little bit. And I'll leave out the vocals for now. Let's just talk about main groove here. Okay, so after we have the structure set, we need the groove of the song, right? Bass and drum groove are so important, especially to like a pop rock song. But in most songs, you want, if you're gonna have a drum and bass, you need those elements to work together. It needs to be groovy, and you don't need to be a drummer, and you don't need to be a bassist to necessarily make this work. You need to have a sense of rhythm and a sense of groove. So if you are a musical person, if you are a dancer, dancers have great rhythm and groove. You can feel that groove. So let's just have a listen and then kind of work backwards to how we created this groove in the verse, and then we'll talk about the groove in the chorus. So let's listen to this verse groove here. So you already know the drums and guitar sounds, right? But you'll notice we brought into these different guitars here. So let's have a listen. Couple things I want to mention there. There is distinct sections of the song, right? Verse and pre. So the first thing you need to kind of think of is, of course, there is groove, but how do you also tell a story with the bass, for example? So in the first part of the bass, all we have are these kind of rhythmic plucks that work really well with the drums. Same thing in the second half of this verse, and then the pre gets busier. So the story to me there is verse is very open and there's space for the vocal, and then the pre is something's getting busier, something's about to happen, which is the chorus. And you might think to yourself, okay, if you just listen to the bass and drums, maybe it sounds too empty for you just with that, but you have to remember, you know, your melody, your vocal, the lead vocal, the most important thing in the song, you got to leave space for that. So that's why we kind of just muted these guitars. They were in there before, like this. And that was just too busy. It was cool. We were like, we got to keep that part because this is cool. But this is very melodic. So hint, that is actually the vocal melody. So we're like, well, why do we need it in the guitar, right? Let's mute the guitars and bring in the vocal melody, which we will in a little bit, and I'll show you how we got there. So the guitars, these picks, are just layering the bass. So it's adding more texture, but not any more information. It's just layering. So it adds more higher end frequencies here. So let's listen together. So let's unmute the picks. Just the bass. Now let's bring the picks back in. Bass is doing lots more movement here, but the picks remain the same. But we bring in these picks here. So let's just solo these. I'll bring that up in volume just so you can hear it, but it's mixed in right now, so let's bring that up. So higher picks, right? Let's bring that back down so it's mixed in. So with all these elements here, again, this is a long video, but I don't want to rush it because it's so important that you know that you can see what's under the hood with all this stuff. This is how songs are made. You know what's funny? I was like, why can't I really hear this picks right now? And that's because I have this, my headphone over, it's panned mostly to the left, and I have the one muff thing over my left ear, so I can kind of hear the room. So I was kind of messing with me there a bit. Okay, let's move on to the chorus here. Just talk about how we've developed the story with these instruments, and then let's get into plugins, how we brought these tracks a bit more to life with plugins. So the bass here is different. We have the build up to the chorus here, this part. I'll keep it zoomed out a little bit just so you can kind of get the picture. Let's go here. So similar to the pre-chorus bass, right? Let's build in our drums. The guitar is, you've heard, there's a lot more energy in the guitar here. So with all these elements. Now, what's the story here of the chorus? To me, the guitar is the story. Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba. That's the story to me. So really we have to support that story instrumentally with just providing more energy from that. And I'll show you that with the keys and the synths that I've added, but also with a little bit more guitars here. So let's talk about the picks. Picks doing the same thing. You can hear it now when it's on my left ear. And then these guitars here. Let's listen here. What do we have here? Right, space. I'll bump those up so you can hear them a bit. Lots of space, right? Lots of openness. And they're super wide. So in the mix, very, very low. But adding just a nice spatial element. It's really, this is a very subtle thing here. But coming back, it's not disrupting the story, which is this. Like, the story is this groove. Like, at the end of the video, you're going to see the full song and how it sounds. But if I just showed you this part here, you would think it's the same song because that's the story. That's the sound, that's the groove. Everything now on the production is just like, okay, how do we really carve this part out to make it sound bigger? And we do things like, all right, let's add some spatial elements like this. Let's add some rhythm of the guitar picks. Let's add some more layers with synths and keys and arpeggiators, which I'll do in a minute and show you. And then, of course, adding vocals and harmonies on top. We'll get to all this. So with the main groove in the chorus, we have this. I want to do a little exercise with you here. Just really, really focus, put the headphones on or your speakers, really focus as I mute these two guitars, just so you get the understanding of like, well, why have this stuff? So focus. Adds an incredible amount of space behind it, doesn't it? But it doesn't change the story. Okay, I might be driving that home too much, but let's move on now and talk about plugins, because you can see in the chorus, second chorus, and third chorus here, grooves are very similar, not adding too much in terms of these specific instruments, guitars, bass, and drums. Plugins, a huge topic in modern production and very important. Some of these plugins you might have, some of these plugins you might not. There are a mix between paid and free, and I'll go through them and I'll try to suggest some alternatives that are available in Logic for free, so you have them. Okay, let's first start with the drums. I'm going to save automation for later, so I won't talk about some of the plugins there because some of that has to refer to the automation side of things. You'll notice why this drums track here at bus 7, it's off, but that becomes on in the chorus parts, and I'll show you why in the automation section. So drums, reverb. This is a Valhalla Vintage Verb, short drum room at a low mix, just to add a bit of space, kind of give it that 80s drum room feel in a way, a bit of a bigger drum set. Stock alternative there using the Space Designer. There's an EQ here. I just thought the kick drum from that sample was just a bit too punchy in the kick, which is why I dipped it out in this range. Very, very subtle, right? We're talking about negative 1.8 dB. This is a EQ, but this is based on automation, so I'll touch on that later. And then this decapitator plugin is distortion, a mix of distortion and saturation, I think. I'm not exactly sure, but it adds a lot of grit, and I use it a lot, and you've likely seen it before on some videos. An alternative here for free in Logic could be something like the distortion plugin. Where would it be? Dynamics, I think, maybe. You know what? Just search for it. Distortion, there it is. So that's the free one in Logic. It's not as good as this one. That's why this one is paid, and it's very popular because there are a lot of awesome, honestly, presets that start. But just putting it on, increasing the drive, and trying out these 3 buttons at the bottom, it's going to give it some life. And I'll show you what that sounds like by bypassing this plugin. So when the plugin here is off, just bypass, the drums sound like this. I'm going to put it on. Super subtle, right? I thought I would have pushed it more coming back to it now. I can even barely notice it there. So I think most of what's happening here is I honestly barely even hear that. So I obviously wasn't doing a lot, and it's because it's quite dry. This is kind of like your on-off knob, dry, wet. If I put it all the way to wet, you'll really hear it. And I will, just so we can actually hear what's going on. That's what's happening. So I brought it back to here. So it is adding a bit of crunch. Okay, bass, what's happening? On the bass, we have a pitch shifter. I wanted to mention this later, and actually I still will, so I'm going to skip on that. The UAD, this is a an EQ plugin, kind of channel strip in a way. I think. Okay, what's happening here? A bit of boost in the low end, about not a lot at all at 100 hertz, and then that's it. So this kind of looks complicated, but what's really happening here, for those not aware of how to work EQs like this, you set these kind of boost, attenuation, and these three knobs here, they kind of work together. And if what's happening here is, if at 100 hertz, so right where this 100 here is, I boost it at 1 dB, and I believe okay, the bandwidth here is sharp. I believe this bandwidth, I'm not exactly 100% sure if it's like a bell curve like this or like this, but I believe if you put this broad, it could be more something like broad like this. I don't know, but I like the way it sounds, and that is really all that matters here. The benefit of kind of using EQs like this is you're a bit more pigeonholed in a good way, because you only have a few options. With EQs like this, I find it can be difficult for beginners because there's just so much you can do, and what's the right answer? So sometimes using EQs like this, and the alternative there in Logic is if you just search vintage EQ, something like this. This is the free one in Logic, and it looks very similar, right? And I believe it's because it's modeled after the same Pultec EQ. Besides that, some more distortion. Just add a bit more dirt. Okay, verse bass is very much similar. I added a reverb on this verse bass though, because I felt in the verses it was a little bit too dry, right? And so sometimes just adding a little bit of some room, and I'll bypass this plugin so you can hear it again. This is very, very subtle stuff. So with it on, off. So off, really, if you're wearing headphones, it really will be close to your ears. Now putting it on. So let's try it off. On. And that really works nicely with the drums, because the drums are also in a room, right? Okay, moving on to next plugins, we have the guitars here. So our main guitar, again, those were coming from the board, the pedal board. So I've added some compression and EQ here. This plugin is off, so I can get rid of that, I believe. I don't think it comes on in automation, so just excuse me 1 second. Yeah, we can get rid of that. I've run just used a Logic amp, ballad clean, to give it a bit more of a guitar-like feel. So let's listen to it without this amp. I just like what that amp is doing. There's no reason than that. You might think like you need to have an answer to stuff in music production when you're producing a song like this, but you don't need an answer. The answer comes from just that feeling of, I like that. That sounds cool. I want that. It works. And then also, but it works with the other elements, right? Because sometimes you might like something in solo, but does it work together with the rest of the song? Because as I'm going through these plugins and showing you what's on each track, it's important to note that don't listen to your tracks too much in solo like this, because even now I'm like, yeah, why did I do that? Or like, that was just a silly decision. But we're missing the bigger picture here, which is how things sound like in context. So although it's handy from a tutorial perspective to like look deep at each plugin from and soloing it out. Don't do that too much with your tracks as you're producing things, because it's the bigger picture. It's how things work together, not so much in solo. Next plugin is compression, just to level out the dynamics of that, because it was a live performance. There's going to be natural dynamics so I wanted to raise the volume of the quieter parts in the guitar, and just which happens to also lower the peaks of the guitar. So if you're performing your guitar on your own, compressor is a great plugin to add to that, so it can level out the dynamics and make it just sound more consistent in the track. It's much easier to mix a compressed guitar into a track versus having it too dynamic, because if it's too quiet in some parts, it will just get lost. But that's a lot. So I do have other videos on compression. Don't want to go too deep into the tutorial aspect of every single plugin, because this video is already long, and I want it to be valuable for everyone here. So if you're liking this, please let me know in the comments. I could really use your feedback into this style of video, and if you like this no editing approach and me just talking through things. And next plugin here is an EQ plugin. So what did I do here? I'm not sure. Let's look. Let's just solo out here. Yeah. So obviously I found it was a bit too, the funny thing about EQs, and when you do it in the moment, if I just took this off and listened to it. Okay, so I made some good decisions there. Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but in this area, it does sound without the EQ on. A vocab word there would be, like, to me, spiky, piercing, and that's why I've lowered these ranges. And just this a little bit, because one sound a bit too boomy in that range, this one note. And you'll hear it if I can solo it out here. Very subtle, right? It's hard to hear because the volume is low, but try again. Those notes. So EQ helps with those things. Now let's keep moving. The rest of the guitar, same thing. I've just duplicated the effects on each of the guitar. So same thing. Actually, let's look at the chorus EQ if I've done something different. Yeah, so it is different in the chorus guitar because it's a different style of playing, right? This is if you remember the chorus guitar. So when it comes to instruments that you have in your production that are busy like this, busy strumming patterns, guitars are notorious for getting in the way of your vocal. So that's why I'm dipping out these ranges here, so it's leaving space for the vocal, which you'll see in a little bit when I add the vocal in, which is why you shouldn't necessarily EQ in solo, right? Because we need to EQ this guitar with the vocal so that they're working together. If I just EQ'd the guitar in solo, I wouldn't do that, because I'm like, I like those frequencies. But when I bring the vocal in, I realize that I need it to be down. Let's move on to the picks. So the picks, we just have some EQ here. Likely, rolling off a lot of the low end because we don't need it. I just want those plucks from the high end. I just want these mid-frequency range. Still a fair amount of nice low energy in there. But I don't need that. I don't need that low end, right? Because the bass is doing the exact same thing. So if I don't like, again, taking this off. I can thin that out because the bass is doing the exact same thing. If you have two layers of instruments doing the exact same thing, then you really don't need to, really don't need to be sharing the same frequency space. electric picks, same thing as the guitar. I'm running it through an amp and some more EQ. So not a lot happening when it comes to plugins, right? You've noticed lots of EQs, some compression, reverb, distortion. Have I covered anything other than that? No. No, I haven't. So it's not a lot when it comes to plugins. It's down to choice of sound and the groove of the sound and arrangement of the song. Before we move on, let's talk about these electrics that are adding that spatial element to the track. Because there's a lot not a lot, it's just a lot of reverb. So what are we using when it comes to reverb? But before the reverb, this smooth operator plugin just really killing the this frequency range here. See, really dropping those mids because I don't need them. I only kind of want this area to shine. And what's the reverb? It's a Valhalla vintage verb at 100% mix in a concert hall with a 2.17 second delay. Now, if I took the reverb off, this is what it sounds like. So there's already a reverb. So there's already reverb from the pedal board, and I'm just adding a lot more with this. So again, the alternative in Logic would be the Space Designer, something in Space Designer, something large. So you can go to the preset and filter out like this is concert hall. So there's likely something like concert hall in the Space Designer here. Rooms, halls, and pick a hall. Now, like reverb is a great tool to add the space, and when you add lots of reverb like this, it pushes it way back. And so something of an element like this electric guitar, really wanted that to be pushed back. So doing two big things there, adding reverb to push it back, but just lowering the volume to push it back, panning one to the left, one to the right, so it's out of the way of everything else too. Now the only other element that I wanted to touch on is this bridge section. Not a super common thing to do in today's music is add a bridge, although very common to do pre-2000, I guess, or maybe even 2010. So we wanted a bridge because we were in that world. Now, this bridge bass is really the cool thing in this bridge, I think. Sounds not that great on its own, but when you have everything together, to me, the bridge arrangement-wise is a point to have a palette cleanser of the production. So you're taking the song in a not necessarily a new direction, but it's different, and it's so coming from the second chorus, you're going to notice a big shift. Kind of coming back to the intro in a way, but then a different build up. So, and I'll get to this in a little bit, but this is the same loop, right? But it feels so different in this bridge, and I'll show you the quick little things I did there in a little bit to make it sound really different. So plugins there, nothing different on the bass that I've done in these other basses. The sound of that is coming also from the sound that we chose from the pedal board. So again, coming back to getting things done up front. So this would have been like when Charlie played this bass. So when we were recording it, he was fooling around with the dials on the pedal board and getting the right sound, being like, hey, does this sound good? Should I add this chorus? Should we do this? Okay, maybe add a bit more. Or like, you're just having that conversation in the room. Whether you're doing that with a collaborate or whether you're doing that, or whether you're doing it yourself, it should be focused and time spent doing that up front. So we just have the recording that we can work with and add a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression here. And that's all I've done. So, but the groove isn't enough, right, to our song. We need to add layers now and texture, different dimension to the song to make it sound bigger. So this is where things get really interesting and fun for me personally. So let's dive in now and talk about how we do this. Okay, so let's add those elements that really bring up this texture. So let's open our hidden tracks here and we'll bring in the piano, we'll bring in the Juno, the synth, the DX7, lots of synths, more ARPs, and then we're going to bring in the guitars here too, and we'll save the vocals for the next section. Okay, so remember in a couple sections back, I talked about the story, right? The story being this groove. So this is our story. Okay, so as a producer, how do you tell this story more? Well, you're not going to want to add more information, right? We're not going to want to add a different, different progression, different melody, right? So let's layer this element, this guitar. Same playing. Obviously, we're going to find different frequency ranges. That's cool and good to do as a producer. You should be thinking about that. But we'll just add different textures. So piano. So it's doing the same thing as a guitar. Da, 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 da. Now this is just a Logic piano. So this is the stock free Logic piano in Logic, and all of those plugins came default, except this Ozone Imager, which is a plugin that I added just to like kind of kill the in a way kill the organicness of the piano and make it just super wide so it's out of the way. Someone's calling me. There's only two plugins on this channel strip. This EQ plugin, where I'm killing the lows. Why? Because we have a bass. We have drums. I don't need that low end of the piano. And this compressor, this Fat Effects console EQ, Chroma Reverb, that's all default when it comes to adding a Logic Pro stock piano. This is just the piano that comes for free in Logic. Okay. And I'm playing that rhythm on my MIDI keyboard. Ba, 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 ba. I'm in the wrong key. Da, da, da. Yeah, I think you get the idea. So, okay, what are other instruments we can add? Let's add this Juno synth, doing the same thing. Right? Okay, also adding this Ozone Imager plugin, which is just widening these elements. So these layers that I have, I don't want to be in the middle per se, because the vocal's in the middle, the bass is in the middle, the guitar is not in the middle either, but it's where the vocal is, and I don't want that to get in the way. So with just these layers and the guitar, we have a much more interesting story, right? Another thing to keep in mind there too, which is just in hearing, which is interesting, is the guitar is doing da 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 catch it, and you could also you could have done that on the piano, right? Ba 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 ba. But I think that would be way too busy. But if you're new to this and you're trying to layer, you might exactly 100% copy what this guitar is doing. And when you're layering, you don't actually have to layer it with every single rhythmic part or a melodic part of the thing you're copying. It can just be on accents. It can be doing some notes. And that's I think really important to keep in mind when you're layering, because it can sometimes get too busy. Okay, let's move on to the acoustic guitars. So the acoustic guitar, here's the same thing. Doing the, let's have a listen. I love the sound of that. It's super thin right now, and it sounds, if on its own, it doesn't sound great. But again, we're adding just the top end texture of the acoustic guitar and the percussion. I love that percussion-y, picky sound of the acoustic guitar that just makes it sound like a hi-hat in a way too. And that's why I think having a busier acoustic guitar is okay, because it gets that pickiness and attackiness of that, what comes from, I don't know, can you, like, if you can hear that, like that attack, you need some of those instruments that have that attack so it cuts through. If everything is smooth, then nothing is going to cut through. So again, on the guitar here, more plugins, right? Probably taking a lot of low end out of the car. Wow. Lots of low end out of the acoustic guitar. Is it too much? I don't think so. I don't want that, the low endness of that. It's just really the purpose of getting this high information here. So if I bring this back, sounds more like an acoustic guitar, but it was right around here. Other plugins: Reverb, the Valhalla Vintage Verb. Just putting it in a short decay room, just pushing it back a little bit, making it sound more glued to the mix. And again, what do we have here? A decapitator, a bit more grit, more edge. This is a preset. I just adding more texture. It's just bringing it more to life. And then an SSL comp. I don't even know why I did that really, but let's see. I'm kind of squashing the guitar. And maybe my decision there was just to have it super level and consistent, just so I could place it in the mix at the right level, and it's just kind of tucked away there. You know, but again, thought it sounded good. That's all that really matters there. So, not surprising, right? Bit of EQ, reverb, distortion, and some compression. I'm not adding these other crazy plugins. These, you know, a lot of them are available for free in Logic, at least the alternatives. Okay, so with these elements, we have this story. Hear those acoustic guitars, right? I love it. It's a cooler story than just this guitar alone. Okay, now what else can we add to bring out even more? And you might ask yourself at this point, when you're producing, like, when is too much, or when is enough, or how much is enough? Sorry. So, and it could be a question of, like, right here, you're like, that's enough, and maybe that is. Maybe I didn't need to push it more. I like to push it to a point where I think it's too much, and then I start muting things. And it could come to a point where I'm at the mixing stage of a song, and I'm just actually muting things because I've pushed it too much. Where at the mixing stage, you're really carving out the final product, final art, the final artistic output of the song, and so you're really seeing it come to life more. But that's just a ramble. I would say push it to a point where you're thinking, like, yeah, I've added too much and it's just too messy. Or it's losing the story, right? Okay, so what are these synth arps here in the chorus? We have this loop here. Kind of cool. Gonna raise that so you can hear it. Again, not much extra information, right? In a way, just extra rhythm and a different texture on that, like what same thing as what these guitars are doing in a way. All right, very low. They're doing the similar things. 16th notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3. eighth notes, I think, right? So when in doubt, add some eighth notes, add some 16th notes, get that depth, not depth, get that rhythm. What's this ARP doing? Bit more information on this. So this is kind of going against everything I was just saying. Eighth notes, just playing a little bit of a triad, I guess. But so a little bit more melodic information. But I found that it really wasn't doing too much of a disservice, that I liked it. So with all three of those, and again, let's go back to plugins here. So on each of the tracks itself, we have one track here, the second track, they're running to a summing stack called Synth ARP. So these are both loops that I've gotten from Splice. I did not play these. They're panned, they're spread a little bit. EQ plugin on each of those. And just one. This is just a gain plugin, likely doing some automation, which I can talk about later. So in the Synth ARP summing stack here, we have EQ, taking out lots of lows from the middle. And I'll talk about that in the mixing section. And then a Tal Chorus plugin. This is a free plugin. You can just search Tal Chorus free plugin, which is a stereo spreader that I thought sounded cool. So, together, acoustics, Juno, piano, guitar, main story, adding the electric picks and the electric space. I should just call that space. So it's and we'll dive a little bit more into telling that story when it comes to the mix. But that's the production story, right? And I don't think I added this ARP. I muted that. I think I kept that muted. I think I went too. So this is a good example. I was like, oh, the ARP sounds so cool. I'm going to add more and it's going to be awesome. And then it's like, that's too much. So you do get to a point where it's like, I've gone over the board, overboard. So that's the chorus. There's no real extra layers in this part of the verse one. So we have this kind of block verse one. Really basic, right? The arrangement is simple. It's telling a story and it's building up to a big chorus. But notice the, so let me fix this marker here. Notice the second part of the, what's going on here? Verse 2 starts, oh, come on. All right, here we go. Whatever. Okay, you get the idea. Verse 2 and pre-2 has more information than verse 1 and pre-1 because we're telling a story. So we're adding these well, what are we adding? We have the drums the same, bass is the same, guitars are the same. What we're adding are these kind of, let's say, dimension elements. So this synth pad here, very, very low in the mix, but I'm going to bring it up, negative 28.5, so you can hear it. No, it's automated, so let's just raise the entire thing for a second. Sounds cool, right? Not a lot of information. Again, production choice, but when you add it to just the guitar and the drums, we have here super low, right? Pan to the left. Kind of sounds like strings in a way, like someone just doing on a violin or whatever cello. And it's just adding something. The DX7, solo that so you can hear it. It's automated again, so see, bringing that up. I'll get into that in a little bit. But here's what it sounds like. This is just one triad, just one chord, playing the entire way through. One chord. And it just adds more space. So this is how you should think as a producer if you want to tell more of a story, but you also want your songs to sound less flat and less, I guess, you want them to sound a bit bigger. This is how you do these things. So with those three elements. And I also looks like I kept this ARP4 in here as well. ARP4. And I've gained it. I've gained automation that. Let's get into that later. So as we tell the story arrangement-wise, verse 2 and pre-2 are a bit bigger. Now the second chorus is very much the same as the first. It's just longer in length. Notice the first chorus is short. The second chorus is longer. And we're adding a tambourine. Almost the only element change there is, but as well as this synth pad. So a bit different, but not too much. Then we have the bridge as a palette cleanser. And then we have the third chorus, which is the exact same, except there is a change in the vocal melody, which makes things sound fresh and interesting again. So we're not done yet. It might seem like you could wrap it up and take it home from here, but as you've noticed in this video, I've pushed this topic back, like automation. Let's talk about it later. Now is the time we're going to talk about it. And we'll also talk about overall song arrangement and dynamics, which I've touched on a little bit throughout the video, but this is a good place to kind of have it focused on it a bit more. So, okay. Automation is something that you can do as you're producing your song, but it can be something to look at the end of a song too. But it's usually something I'm just constantly, not constantly, but it's something that I'm adding as I'm adding sound. And I'm going to dig deep on this right now so you get the idea. The drums is the biggest thing, right? Because it's one loop. So I guess the one way you can automate something is by using a filter or a channel EQ, which will have a dramatic effect or a dramatic result on the sound. So filtering, like literally filtering out frequency, so it sounds like usually it sounds like it's underwater a lot of the time. And you'll see here, the intro sounds like it's underwater coming up. Just this part here. So that's that filter. This is what's happening here. This is a, now I'm just trying to think like how deep I should go on automation here. So stay with me if you're a little new to this. But what's happening here is this EQ plugin is being automated to create a sweep, and you'll see this frequency range here. It's going to sweep to the right as I play this track. But notice it stopped here. I've kept it cut down underwater all the way until the chorus. So it's not really being able to shine until it's at this chorus. Like notice how different these drums sound. To these drums, the verse drums. Same loop, but just different drums. So what's happening here is I'm kind of coming down on the loop with the high end and the low end, these two bands here. And I'm not really like I'm throttling that. I'm not really letting that go until the chorus. So you can do that through automation. And what I have here is just the high cut frequency kind of coming out of water, keeping it, and I'll keep that EQ plugin up just below here so you can see as I kind of scan through the track. Notice what happens with the EQ plugin. So scanning, it's being kind of leveled there, and now it's going to come up. The highs are going to come up. Then everything, the whole drums shine through, and then it comes back down. Those low ends. So that kick isn't as punchy because I'm taking away those low frequencies. I'm cutting those right now. And then the chorus again, boom, shines. So this is the arrangement technique of using filters to create peaks and valleys and tell a story with your drums. If you just had the drums flat out all the way through, it just isn't going to sound good. So in one way, we're trying to take this loop and make it feel a bit more dynamic. Ultimately, you might have a drummer that plays those dynamics and also plays something different in each section, but I just didn't have that opportunity with this song. The other thing with the drums is the room. So the room reverb, this bus, is a Valhalla vintage verb. It's a drum width reverb. So it's making the drums on the chorus sound bigger. So notice how the drums on the chorus with this reverb. It sounds, and now listen to it on the verse. Less verb, right? Subtle. It's not even that subtle. It's quite a difference where it just sounds, boom, bigger. And I've done that automation, so it's muted in the verses and it comes up in the choruses. So other peaks and valleys of arrangement in the drums, which we've talked about, is adding hats and crashes, tambourines in those chorus sections to create more peaks. With the bass, we've already told that story. Literally, I've told you in the first part of the chorus. We've gotten busier as the song goes on, how we play the bass. Guitars, we've touched on that. Let's see if in the guitars and bass we've done some automation here. So not much, to be honest. And I can tell that because like usually when you're there, well, not usually, when there's automation, there's always these lines and you can see even like this reverb automation, but you kind of see these faded blue lines behind. That means that there's other automation happening behind the scenes as well. And in here, you can see these faded yellow lines. That doesn't mean that there's an automation there. I guess it just means like that's where the volume is set. So I can just scroll down and look at what other tracks have automation here. Bit of volume automation here on the end, not really important. It's just this last guitar part. Fading out the track, so that's really not important. That's just a volume automation. So the synths have a fair amount of automation coming in and out of the track here. So what's this? Not really. It's just stabilized there and then comes up a bit in this part. Yeah, I don't even know. I don't know why I did that. It's not really important even to talk about. The other one here, volume automation. Now this is something more significant. It's like rising up over time. And one thing you can do to kind of get that tactile feel if you want when you're doing the automation is instead of just clicking it and drawing it with your mouse, you can actually use like, go here to touch or latch. I'm blending the two, touch or latch, and use your mouse on the fader and slowly feel it with the mouse. You can't even go further by actually using your MIDI controller. as well. Now, on this gain automation here and a volume automation here. So we have gain automation, volume automation, filter automation, and reverb automation that we've done on this track. Now, not as significant as I thought it would be, but here's the reason why. What elements, like the bulk of these elements, all of these tracks are being played by a human. So there's dynamics already within those tracks. These and the acoustic guitar is played too. Besides that, we have this is MIDI and all of this is MIDI, which are, those dynamics are less. Although this is MIDI, I played that, so there I am carrying some dynamics through the MIDI keyboard. But that's one thing to reference or gut check maybe when you're producing your song, if you're using all loops or if you're using all MIDI. If you're using all loops, then the dynamic is going to be low through your whole song. So you really should be using automation to find those dynamics so that there are peaks and valleys, and the section and the arrangement is different in each section. So you're telling a story. Because loops don't have that dynamic, right? They're usually compressed and just flat out the same throughout. So if you're playing, that's great because you're going to be carrying those dynamics through. If you're actually playing the instrument, if you're playing with a MIDI keyboard, you're still getting a bit of velocity through. So that's kind of, I'll give you like a B minus for that. These are B minus pianos and Junos, and a B minus DX7 because I'm still kind of playing it, so I'm carrying a bit of dynamic there, but it is a thing to gut check in your song. Have I played any instruments here? Okay, I've played a lot. Cool. Then there is going to be a lot of dynamic where I can use compression to like find those sweet spots. And I'll get into that a little bit more. The compression and the sweet spots of finding places in your mix when we get into the mixing section. So the last thing I want to say when it comes to song arrangement is you're going to want to get this right. So pay attention here. Is you just need to listen to your song at the end, because we're pretty much at I would say nearing the end of the production of your song where you're at this point. We haven't touched on vocals, but that's the final thing here is listen through from start to finish. Is it telling a story? Where are you losing your attention or the excitement? And are you getting enough? Are there enough sections in a song where you're getting a bit of a rest or a palate cleanse where it's bringing you back in with a bigger element? Or is the whole thing just exhausting just to listen to? These are questions that you need to ask yourself when you're doing that final listen. You need to be excited about it. Okay, no song is complete, as I'm sure you've already figured out, without vocals, right? The most important part of the song. Saved it for last. Should you do it last? No, you should probably be thinking about vocals way up front in the songwriting section. But I didn't want to just piecemeal it through the video. I did want to have a focused section on it. So let's dive in here and unhide the vocals. So we have the lead vocal bus and the doubles here. Let's see. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, let's unmute those. Okay, great. Let's talk about it. So the lead vocal bus, obviously, again, I hear him saying obvious when it shouldn't necessarily be obvious to all beginners. When you're recording your vocal, again, like anything, take the time to get the right performance. I can't tell you how many times this has happened to me where I haven't spent the time getting the right performance and focusing on the mood and the tone of your voice, and then I've been inside Logic and just been like, man, this vocal is bad, and how can I get this to work? And it's because the performance isn't there. So really, if you just spend the time getting the right performance, it's going to save you so much time in the mixing and making it come to life. So that's kind of something we're not covering in this video, is all that upfront work that it takes to get a song really, really sounding professional. Okay, Now, because we're not touching on that part of the video, let's touch on that post-production part of a vocal. What do you do after the fact when you have a good performance? And how can you layer doubles? How can you layer harmonies to make it even tell a better story from the vocal perspective? So Charlie recorded this vocal and sent me the stems, and I put it in the track. And let's go through it. So we have the vocal melody. Now let's just listen a little bit to hear what this is sounding like, and then reverse engineer that by going through the vocal plugins and then talking about some of the automation that's happening here.
When we were kids,
let's listen with the rest of the track.
When we were kids, we dreamed that we would reach the highest heights, rocking out on imaginary stages every night. Though life is a roller coaster, we never got off this ride. And I got your back and you got mine. We're in this thing for life. So come on, as long as we got each other, we got it all right here, right now. We can climb any mountains, breathe in, breathe out.
Great vocal, right? Great performance. Charlie is a fantastic musician and singer, so I wasn't concerned there at all. But it's made my job a lot easier as the producer to kind of bring this to life with a polish. Now, let's go through it. Bit of auto-tune, just a stock Logic Pro auto-tune plugin. Not a lot. It's just really smoothing out the tuning. I like it to have it there as like a parachute for me, but not a lot is happening. It doesn't sound auto-tuning, right? EQ, this EQ is taking out not doing a lot, right? The vocal sounds good on its own. I don't want to do too much to it. So I'm taking away a bit of low end muddiness that doesn't need to be there. This zone, always a culprit zone of being a bit too boomy. And sometimes this zone here can be a culprit of what's that vocab word that people use? Is it the piercing? Is it the piercing harshness area? I honestly don't know those English words too much. It helps to attach those English words to sounds, but I just like to do it with a feeling. Next, a compressor. This is a stock Logic Pro compressor. This is the Studio FET. I think this sounds really punchy, this one. And it boosts the vocal. So let's do a bit of an on-off test with these three on. Okay, let's first do off, soloed.
When we were kids, we dreamed that we would reach the highest heights.
Okay, let's bring these three plugins, foundational plugins.
When we were kids, we dreamed that we would reach the highest heights.
The compressor does so much, right? It just it's amazing. It just squishes the vocal. It makes things louder. It makes things more smooth. It brings out the body and everything of the vocal. This effect rack is something that is amazing, and it's a paid plugin by SoundToys, and you can just add a multitude of like effects, and you can get started with presets that sound great. But what's happening here is Decapitator. I just did something. Decapitator, what am I trying to say? Distortion, basically saturation, distortion, and delay. So this off.
When we were kids, we dreamed.
This on.
When we were kids, we dreamed that we
super cool.
would reach
This delay
the
is really cool.
highs.
I love this. I think it sounds so great. If there was any paid plugin that I think you would get, would be this SoundToys bundle. API 550. This is doing one thing. It's probably doing a bit of a shelf boost at 12.5K. So bringing air to the vocal. One thing I think a lot of people miss is that airiness in the vocal. And this really just boosts that.
When we were kids, we dreamed that we would reach the highest heights.
I love that plugin too. As you can see, I like vocal plugins. The next plugin is a de-esser. This is fundamental to any vocal to take away highest heights. When we were kids, we needed to reach the highest heights. So taking away those S's. And the next plugin is a reverb plugin. So this is on the insert, a plate reverb at low, short decay. So it's snappy. I guess that's the right word to say. It's snappy and it's not washing out the vocal. It's just putting it in a bit of a space and gluing it to the rest of the mix. So with these plugins are off and they're automated, and I will get to that in the chorus. But just with these, everything here, you can have this.
When we were kids, we dreamed that we would reach the highest heights. Rocking out on imaginary stages every night.
Sounds super cool, right? Very, very, very cool. And something's happened, I think, with the mix a little bit since I've been poking around. So please bear with me there in terms of hearing things a little bit in error, let's say. Okay, now that's the lead vocal. And you can see here on a track, both the lead vocal and the lead double are going to a summing stack. And the summing stack is the track that I've just gone through. On the track itself, we just have a bit of a de-esser. I'm not really sure why I did that. It must have been because I thought that the S's were too harsh. And on this, we have nothing, just a plugin I tried that I turned off. So these two reverbs that are happening here, will probably come on in the chorus. So you can see these lines here happening on the lead vox. So we have a verb and a delay both going on in the chorus. So the first one is a verb. Okay, no, a verb and a delay, it looks like. So we have on this bus track a delay and then a reverb and then an EQ. And so on channel strips, the sound goes top down through the plugins. So we're hitting a delay, a quarter note delay, which is delaying the vocal in quarter notes. And now this is, I like to explain things fundamentally in steps like this, but if you find that this is too slow for you, please let me know in the comments, because this is the feedback I need. If it's just a Goldilocks fit, please let me know that as well. After the delay, we have the reverb, which puts the delay in a space and makes it sound very washy. If I just listen to the vox verb, you'll hear that. I'm gonna raise it for you. That's just the aux track, right? If I bring in the dry vocal,
as long as we got each other,
sounds cool, right?
We got it all right here, right now.
Keep in mind, we also have this one coming in, this another delay, an eighth note delay. So it's just making it, I mean, is that right to put a quarter note delay and an eighth note delay? I've never read something that says that's wrong. Does it sound cool? To me, it does. So do it. Okay. So together, again, pre-vocal without those spatial elements.
Though life is a roller coaster, we never got off this ride.
There's still reverb on it right from the insert, but it's not as washy. Now the chorus,
as long as we got each other,
a bit more spacious,
we got it all right,
more
here,
washy,
right.
bigger, and that's very, very pop rock 80s, right? Okay, so how else can we make the vocal stand out? Because it could be a question of like, if I'm going to get into these harmonies and doubles here, but let's say you've added your vocal and you've added a double track here. This is just a double track doing the same notes.
As long as we got each other.
So it's just duplicating the lead. It's just adding a bit more depth to that lead. Now you might think, okay, that's done. This is the song. This is the chorus.
As long as we got each other. We got it all right here, right now. We can climb any mountains, breathe in, breathe out. Sunset at the top of the world. As long as we.
So, and it could be done. Now, I think what a lot of people don't explore are this stack here that I just want to touch on, which are the doubles. And well, let's listen here. So we dive in. So let's listen to this stack.
As long as we got each other, we got it all right here, right now. We can climb any mountains, breathe in, breathe out.
I recognize that voice because that is my voice. So I've done a double left, double right, and even more doubles. So this is just
As long as we got each other.
same notes as Charlie doing the lead, but it's my voice, so it's a different texture. Kind of like layering the Juno and the piano on the guitar. Now I'm layering just like I'm another instrument. So it's going to sound different. It's going to add a new texture. Doing the same thing here.
As long as we got each other.
But I'm now changing the way I sing it. I'm doing a little bit more chest voice there, a little bit more earthiness. So it's giving even more texture. Now I'm going to bring it up another level and do the octave above that.
As long as we got each other.
So I sound a bit like a chipmunk, but I've auto-tuned those, so I'm just on point. And what you can do with background vocals is you can auto-tune them quite heavy. It won't sound like that in the mix. But when you solo them like this, it can sound like too much, but it's not like that in the mix. So don't be afraid to push the auto-tune a lot when on background vocals. But when you add this entire stack together, now it just gives a totally new change of perspective in the chorus and width, right? Because all of these doubles are panned quite far left and right. So it's giving it even more width in the chorus and helping expand that, contrast the chorus, coming back to arrangement and making more peaks and valleys here. So if I just mute the doubles as and harmonies as I play the chorus.
As long as we got each other. We got it all right here, right now. We can climb any mountains, breathe in, breathe.
To me, they're a must to have in there to add that separation from the verses. And when it comes to vocals, we have them coming back. Same thing, second chorus, same thing, third chorus. And the lead vocal bus here, same thing happening throughout. So not so many plugins, a bit more than what I've had on the rest of the tracks there, but still we're talking fundamentals here of EQ, compression. This is really saturation, de-essing. We're not adding a lot of weirdness to the sound because we're really just developing or making the raw ingredients shine. We didn't touch on the doubles plugin, so let's do that. It's more or less the same thing. I think looks like what I've done here is just copied the channel strip. I have auto-tune, EQ. This is a compressor, so just a different style of compressor. 1176. I've done the shelf here. Oh, we've even cranked it at 6 dB to pop those harmonies, the doubles. And I've likely de-essed harder too, because just like you can push the auto-tune more, you can push the de-essing more in the background vocals. Almost even up to a point where they sound a bit lispy, but I like to make sure that those S's are smooth so they're not poking out too much. Now we have all the parts. The production thing here now is in context. Like if I was producing the song, I'd take a break from it, maybe mix it in the afternoon or come back the next day and mix it. But let's just get on to the next section because this is so much fun. We need to mix the song now. And I've piecemealed a bit of the mixing lessons throughout this video, so let's just focus now in on it and talk about mixing. I want to talk about 4 points in the mixing section of this video. So the first one would be setting levels, specifically volume, but also looking at panning as well. So as I produce this song, in context, would be always constantly shifting the levels, the volume, and the panning. Mixing, if you are producing and mixing the song, you likely never get to a point where you're just like, okay, let's mix the song and then start from scratch. Because really, like, when I start mixing this song, I'm kind of already at the point where I'm like, it's kind of mixed because I'm like liking the way it sounds. So, but I think it's important to do some type of mental shift when you're the producer and the mixer, to be like, okay, I'm done with the production. I'm not going to be adding anything. Everything feels groovy and locked in, and it's kind of there. I want to make the mental shift now and put the mixing hat on. Just be like, let's really focus on the sound, like soundscape of it, the levels of everything, the clarity of the tracks, and the space of the track. And then, of course, in the next section, we'll talk about mastering and making it louder. So taking all that with a grain of salt, let's do a little bit of that hybrid model where we've mixed it a little bit already. So talking about volume leveling, one thing that to anchor your thought process when it comes to leveling is when you're looking at volume, try to anchor it around some element in your track itself, so you have a North Star to build around. If you're just leveling things for the sake of leveling, like, what are you leveling it around? So it could be you level it around the drums. It could be that you level it around the vocal. I would suggest that you do drums or vocals or your key foundational element. You're not going to want to level your whole track around like your hi-hats or something, or, I mean, you can, but I would choose something foundational. Side tip to this is just get a comfortable listening level in your headphones or speakers when you're mixing as well. Try not to switch that so much because it loses your benchmark of where you're at for volume. So if you have like little lights on your interface where it showcases the level you're at, get a comfortable level in your there so it's not too loud, so you can listen for longer. Because if you listen too loud, it can exhaust your ears, although it sounds better, right? You don't want to listen too loud. Now, when you set that, try to switch that so you have that benchmark. So set the volume and then listen to your foundational element. Let's say it's the drums, and you level the drums. Get it comfortable in your listening in your headphones, and then you build the elements around it. So if I'm doing the drums, and because I've already mixed this, I can kind of take a listen and use the drums still as my anchor. But if I'm listening right now to the verse and pre, I'm really only listening to drums, bass, guitars, and vocals, right? So I can think to myself, okay, if the drums are the anchor, then how does everything else sound in reference to the drums based on volume? So I can do that to the verse and pre. Now I can also do that as it plays into the chorus. I do that to the chorus, but I have much more information, decisions to make in the chorus because we have so many more instruments. So if that's overwhelming, you can build up those elements by adding the tracks in. So you can solo the drums, and we can just add the bass and the vocal. Okay, now let's just say that's enough for now. Now let's add the guitars in and level the guitars. Always focusing just on volume at the beginning. So let's do that for the verse.
When we were kids, we dreamed. When we were kids, we dreamed we would reach the highest heights. Walking on imaginary stages every night.
And sometimes if for practice, you can just like raise the volume, like raise it way too loud or raise it even like way too low so you can't hear it. And then fade it, like find that balance in, right? Like just because I had it set there, whatever was like around this, doesn't necessarily mean it's right. It could be here, it could be here, it could be here. It's a question of taste, but it's also a question of like getting it right and making sure it feels right. And that's the thing about mixing is it is like a practice thing to hear it, but there's very much of a taste thing as well.
When we were kids, we dreamed we would reach the highest heights. Rocking out on
So that feels good, right? And maybe like now let's bring the lead vocal in.
when we were kids, we dreamed we would reach the highest heights. Rocking out on imaginary state.
Snare drum is bugging me a little bit, but now I'm getting into a whole different realm of things. This is what happens when you mix. Be cognizant of going down rabbit holes that are unproductive, because when we are soloing out tracks and listening to it and being super analytical on the mix, this is when things can just go wrong. And it's happened to me before where I just like at the end of it, I've done so many things, maybe not for the better, and maybe what I had at the beginning of the whole entire mix session was actually the best mix. So it's important to not go down too many rabbit holes. Another point there, and I know this is I'm talking a lot instead of showing here, but it's important to know that why not get your song mixed by someone else? Because you've done it to a point now where you've done everything. Get it mixed by someone else if you haven't done it before. I didn't do that to this song. I mixed it myself, but and that's really because at the end of the production session, I had a mix that I'm just like, I'm happy with this. I'm good with it. And Universal Music decided they liked it, so that was great. The thing is, what was really insightful for me before, when I was learning, is having someone else mix it just to see like, they did make it better. And probably they could have made it better with this mix as well. But heck, you don't always need it. It's a suggestion that I think you should do to get someone else mix your song if you haven't done it before. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about EQ. So EQ is a big topic, and so the one caveat I'm going to say there, the prerequisite you need to have with EQ is you actually need to know what you're listening to. So if you find it difficult to EQ tracks and to hear frequency ranges, that is normal, because you can't expect to ride a bike the first time you get on a two-wheeler. You're going to fall and you're going to cut your knees, and you're going to have to build up the strength and the eye coordination and just to figure out how to ride that two-wheeler. Same thing for EQs, because you're actually like literally training your ears to hear different things, and that takes time. So you gotta have to be cool with yourself and be a little bit patient with yourself, not cool, patient with yourself to figure that out. So with all that kind of prereq aside, use EQ as a tool to create space for every instrument. And to know what space to create, you need to know the specific frequency ranges. So let's just bring up an EQ, and I'll talk about that and how I've approached that with this song and how I approach it with every song. Now this EQ here is just a standard channel strip EQ. And we have, in this range, we have low end frequencies, this range we have highs, and this range middle, right? Low, medium, high. So drums, bass, vocals, keys, a lot of those instruments fall in those mid to lows. So when I talk about space, I mean, you can see here, our drums are in this space, in the low space. Our bass will be in those spaces as well. And I actually, thinking of it now, I'm going to put this on the stereo out so everything goes through there so you can see it. So we have lows, okay, we have bass, also low. So they're sharing the same space. Does that mean with EQ you need to have like only one thing in that space? No, you don't. It just means that to be aware that they're sharing the same space, because it's not always EQ that you have to use to create space. Volume is the other tool you can use to create space. For example, if the drums and bass are in the same space, but I lower the sound of the bass, then even though they're in the same space, they're not competing because they're at different volumes. If they're the same volume, then I might need to say, well, okay, I should maybe dip a bit of low end frequencies in the EQ to make space for the drums, or vice versa with the drums. Reverb is another tool where you push things back in the mix. So you can also say, well, let's add a bit of reverb, so push the drums back in the mix so it's not fighting with the drums. And so you see how volume, EQ, and reverb, compression, they're all used for the same purpose in a way, but just used in different ways. So there's no rule book where you're like, check the volume, check the EQ, check the reverb. You don't have to use them. You use them all always differently, and it's a taste of how you want to place things. So in this track, what did we do? I boosted the bass, and it looks like remember when I filtered the drums in the verses, so I knew I filtered these drums so there was no low end in the verses, right? That's the bass, so don't get confused there. There's no real low end warmth in the verses or the pre's. So the bass, I actually wanted to boost the bass because I wanted that to be really, big on the low end. Now guitars, EQ, remember I cut all those lows because the bass has those lows. So it helps to compartmentalize in your head the lows, mediums, and highs when you're thinking about space, specifically with EQ, because I think it just helps compartmentalize those through buckets. Because when you go in mids, you can think, okay, well, what are my mid frequencies now? A lot of frequencies, right? A lot of your instruments will be sharing that mid space. Your vocals will be in the mids, your keys, your synths, your drums, your bass. So this is where your other tools come into play. They're not going to be always at the same level of volume, right? In some instruments, like the guitar, we had this guitar here, was because it was so busy, I cut out these frequencies because it was fighting with the vocal here.
As long as we got each other, we got it all right here.
Vocal is very busy in this range, right? So making space for that vocal. But if the guitar was like bum, doop doop, dum, then I don't really have to worry about EQ so much on that guitar because it's not really busying up. It's not a busy track, so I don't have to think about it in the same way. But when element is so busy, you do have to think about it this way because it's constant and you might need to shape space. With the Junos and the pianos, I likely did the same thing. Although, no, I did not, because really, I didn't touch on this earlier, is the panning element of a track. So if you pan an element to the left or the right, it's going to get itself out of the way. So if you have a vocal that's right in the middle and you have a piano, but then all of a sudden you put the piano over there, then it's actually not really fighting for space anymore because it's now in a different part of your stereo field. So panning is your other option to place instruments within the stereo field so they're not fighting. So I didn't mention that at the beginning. So panning is your other tool. And so this piano and Junos, so this piano and the Juno, they're really wide, and they're not getting in the way of the vocal. Although it looks like I have EQ'd this vocal, and we'll talk about it here, just cutting out the lows because of the bass, right? Because the bass is so low, so taking out that space as well. Now, it's difficult to do it EQ. When we were doing volume, you can listen to the whole chorus track and level volume, especially as a beginner. You can do that because volume is really easy to hear, right? Everyone can hear volume. Now, EQ is hard to do at the beginning when you're listening to so many things because it's hard to identify what frequencies are coming from which instrument. So when you're using those compartmentalization buckets of low, medium, high, to help you, what you can do is, okay, solo out like all the low instruments together, drums, bass, maybe some keys, maybe some vocals, and use EQ to carve out space. And then move to your mid bucket, and then move to your high bucket, and work your way through it with those buckets. Let's touch on reverb and delay, which are the spatial plugins. As you've seen kind of throughout this video, I've automated a lot of them to come on in the chorus to make it sound bigger. So that's one thing that reverb can do, is to make it sound larger inside your stereo field. So as I mentioned before, the reverb can also help push things back in the track, but the other thing is to make it sound way bigger. Think of yourself like when you're in a cathedral or something and you shout or you clap. It sounds big, and that's exactly what reverb is doing. You can emulate the style of rooms, of physical spaces or outdoor spaces to make it sound like it's in a different dimension. So you really need to use reverb because it passes on context to the listener of what's happening in the song. In the chorus, it wants to sound big and stadium-like, so I use reverb in that context to make it sound like that. If I shut down all the reverbs and turn them all off, everything would sound kind of dry and for this style of song, not good. But it can sound good if you don't have reverb. If you really want a nice, intimate recording that sounds like, if it's just a few elements that sound very raw and organic and intimate and up close, and it's kind of like you're just really beside the guitar player and the singer, that can sound great. You don't necessarily need a reverb all the time, but it really will depend on what context do you want to pass on to the listener. That's why I have these big drum reverbs and these big old vocal reverbs happening here.
As long as we got each other, we got it all right here, right now.
Like if you just listen to those two tracks, it's kind of like sound checking on a stadium, right? You have the singers doing the sound check and the drummer doing the sound check at the same time. And that's the context I wanted to pass on to the listener. So that's why I added these big reverbs during that section, but then taking them out in the verse section to making it sound a bit smaller, right? A bit smaller, it's still there, it's a bit smaller. Okay, let's talk about the best thing. This is the best thing when it comes to music production, is the glue processing or the stereo out processing, the mix bus processing. that you would do on a track on your stereo output to really glue things together. Now, okay, what things should you consider? Definitely some type of compression to smooth out the track, right? To glue the track together. You want to bring those. You want to bring those quiet tracks up and those loud tracks down. You want to do some squishing, and so I'll always, almost all the time, add this SSL compressor and do some light compression. I say light, and I should have. It might not be so light. Let's have a listen. Yeah. Super light. Very, very light. I could probably even compress that more. But what compression is going to do is going to glue your mix. So you do want to have a compressor on your mix bus. So you could even have it on there the whole time if you want. I like to put it on more along the end of the production phase. There is a multi-band compressor here as well. Not going to get into that. That's a bit more low mix. About 58% of this is happening. It's just smoothing it out. I do actually like to put this plugin on. It's a paid plugin by FabFilter. So compression or multi-band compression. You could put EQ on there. Anything you do on this track is going to affect everything significantly, right? So it's subtle things. This is the final, you're at the end of the road here where you're making these slight adjustments that are just going to bring added benefit to the song. So we're flirting with the stage of mastering, at least in my position, like as a producer. I wouldn't master my own tracks. I would send it out for mastering just because I don't honestly have the ear for this stuff where it's like these super subtle details where we're talking about really, really things that a lot of people can't even hear. I can hear them a little bit, but it's in a way where I just like, if they know what they're doing and it's not that expensive, I'll just get someone else to do it. And I know that it's for certain going to be okay getting on Spotify and stuff like that. Now, have I mastered tracks before? Yes. Did I master this track? Yes. Have I mastered tracks on Spotify? Yes. It does. It is. You can do it yourself. So, and the plugin that does it for you is this Ozone plugin. It's kind of like cheating in a way. It doesn't always sound great, but it does always sound good, I think. So I'll usually do it as like I'll always do it if I'm just sending quick demos out. I'll put Ozone on there just because it just like seems to work with a bit of magic on it. And if I'm putting something on Spotify, I might do it like this, or I might get someone else to master it. Honestly, it's really project dependent. Producing, 5 or 6 songs a month and releasing them on Spotify, you find that you just you have a few different types of avenues that you take in each song that you're doing. So let's go forward with this. Now, this is a paid plugin. It's kind of expensive. You can rent it on Splice for like $20 a month and just try it out. What's happening with this plugin is it actually does this AI. It runs an AI. It looks at your song, it listens to it, and it runs an AI algorithm suggesting the best thing for it based on genre. Now, the thing is, you can just add a custom thing. So like these songs here that I've uploaded, you can just add a song that you want it to not to sound like, but maybe the same master, so same level, same tone, I guess. And you can just upload the file and it will master it kind of like that track. This is the world that we live in nowadays. It runs an EQ on it, so you can see this track here sends some EQ. It looks bigger than it is right now, this EQ. This is only like probably maybe 2 dB. Yeah, so this looks a lot bigger than what's actually happening. It runs a spatial imager on it, so it gives it more width. It runs some type of multi-band compression stabilizer on it. I think that's what that is. I don't even really know. A dynamic EQ, so EQ, but only happening those These bands here are only adjusting when the sound is happening in those areas, and then a limiter, a maximizer. Now, if you don't have this plugin, you don't need it. Again, you can get someone else to master your song. You can master your song without these plugins too. You can use a compressor, you can use a limiter in Logic and get it to the right levels that you need. The other thing you can try in Logic is just the mastering assistant as well. It's kind of like a no-zone plugin that we were just looking at, but it's the Logic one. It's a bit less flexible, but it does do the same things in a way. You have a bit less flexibility. It will analyze your track like it's doing now, and it will suggest some things that you should make. So when you're looking for something free and something easy, you can look at the mastering assistant here. It will get it to a level where it's like, yeah, this is good enough to put on Spotify. The world of AI, it's a crazy place. But as you can see, I use the Ozone mastering here. Maybe I could have used the Logic one, but it was accepted by Universal Music to hopefully be in a commercial. So producing a song at this level takes time and practice. But here's the thing, you can actually shortcut this process if you only focus on the right things though. So watch this video here, and I've condensed 8 years of Logic Pro advice in just 8 minutes. I'm going to teach you the most important things that help take me from beginner to full-time producer, which now allows me to support my family. So enjoy, and I'll see you in that one.